The end of Earth did not come with silence. It came with fire. Skies once painted with sunsets and the delicate glow of auroras now blazed red with the descent of alien fleets. The first wave had struck the oceans, vaporizing miles of water into steaming clouds that rolled across continents. The second wave shattered cities: New York, Beijing, Moscow, Cairo. São Paulo reduced to burning craters within hours. Skyscrapers that had taken decades to build crumbled in seconds as alien kinetic strikes rained down from orbit. Billions died before they even understood what was happening. Governments broadcast desperate pleas for peace, for negotiations, but the invaders did not answer. They had not come to parley. To them, humanity was a mistake of evolution, a spark too dangerous to let burn unchecked. Their cold logic decreed, eradicate them before they rise further. By the end of the first month, oceans boiled, forests burned to black husks, and radioactive glass plains replaced once thriving nations. Yet in the shadows of destruction, humanity's oldest instinct, the stubborn refusal to vanish, ignited. Survivors huddled in bunkers, metro tunnels and caverns, watching the world collapse above them, but they whispered the same words their ancestors had carried through wars, plagues and storms. We will fight. We will endure. In that whisper beneath the smoke-filled skies, the seed of defiance was sown. The survivors were not many, but they were enough. In forgotten missile silos and abandoned mining tunnels, they gathered like sparks hiding from a storm. Food was scarce, water contaminated, and every cough in the dark threatened to betray them to patrolling drones. Yet necessity became the mother of invention once again. Engineers tore open the shattered husks of alien drones, dissecting their circuitry with crude tools, scribbling diagrams on broken concrete walls. Scientists, stripped of their laboratories, repurposed the ruins of schools and hospitals into makeshift research cells, splicing alien alloys with human steel. Soldiers, some veterans of Earth's wars, others nothing more than farmers and students, trained the young and the broken to fight. And slowly a transformation took place. The ruins of cities became smelters where scrap was melted into weapons. Satellites that once delivered. Television signals were rewired to scramble alien communications. Even toys and kitchen appliances were scavenged into traps and explosives. Every hand, no matter how small, contributed to the growing resistance. For the first time in human history, borders meant nothing. Russians fought beside Americans, Africans beside Europeans, Asians beside South Americans. Humanity ceased to be a collection of nations. It became one fractured, furious species united by loss and the burning will to survive. In the dark underground, while the world above remained a hellscape, humanity forged something the invaders had never anticipated: unity. Hope arrived not as a great victory, but as a miracle stolen from the wreckage of defeat. In the vacuum above the dead planet, a damaged alien warship drifted, crippled from some unknown battle. Its hull was scarred, engines sputtering faint blue flame, its crew long gone. A team of desperate scavengers, farmers turned engineers, soldiers turned raiders, risked everything to reach it. Their shuttle, a patchwork of human steel and alien scraps, barely clung to orbit as they latched onto the derelict vessel. When they breached its hull, the silence inside was suffocating, broken only by the hiss of leaking air. They expected nothing but death. Instead, they found possibility. Alien consoles flickered with dying power. Weapons, though foreign, still hummed faintly with energy. They dragged pieces back to Earth, trip after trip and against all odds. The ship stirred again under their hands. It flew, unsteady, imperfect, but it flew. When the survivors on Earth saw its silhouette streaking through the broken skies, they cheered for the first time since the invasion began. That ship became more than stolen metal. It became a promise. If we can take one, we can take more. If we can fly one, we can fight them where they live. Humanity no longer looked at the stars with terror. Now when they gazed upward, they saw their future. From the ashes of Earth, they would rise not as victims, but as a force destined to claim the stars. The stolen ship became the heartbeat of the resistance. It was clumsy at first, refusing to obey human hands. Its controls responded not to touchscreens or joysticks, but to pulses of bioelectric current, something no human body could naturally produce. But humanity was nothing if not adaptable. Engineers built crude neural interfaces out of scavenged electronics, strapping copper wires and wetware, bands onto their skulls until sparks of recognition flickered between man and machine. When it finally obeyed, even for a moment, Tears rolled down the faces of those who had labored in darkness. That ship, christened Ashes 1, was not merely a weapon, it was a declaration. For the first time since the invasion, humans had not just survived, they had taken. Soon more derelicts were hunted, ambushed, and captured. Each one returned to hidden bases carved into mountains or buried under oceans, where engineers and scientists stripped them bare and rebuilt them with human ingenuity. Alien weapons were reforged with Earth's pragmatism, and alien engines were restructured to run on hybrid fuels. Every captured ship was a story told in fire. Humanity was no longer prey. They were hunters learning to prowl the void. Yet victories came with blood. For every ship stolen, dozens died. Alien patrols scoured the skies, and orbital strikes punished any resistance nests they discovered. Families vanished in firestorms when bases were exposed. Entire communities sacrificed themselves so one team could escape with a fragment of alien technology. The cost of progress was written in ash and bone, but humanity had long known how to endure loss. Each funeral in the underground tunnels did not weaken them, it hardened their resolve. The invaders believed humanity's will would crumble under relentless extermination, but they misunderstood the species they sought to erase. The more they destroyed, the stronger the survivors' hatred burned. Songs began to rise in the tunnels. Old anthems of defiance once sung in humanity's wars for freedom. Children who had never seen the sun learned to trace constellations on the ceilings of their bunkers, whispering that one day they would see those stars for real. And slowly, ever so slowly, the balance began to shift. The invaders no longer faced scattered remnants of a dying species. They faced the early stirrings of a civilization reborn from its own ashes. The first true battle of the resistance came in the skies above what was once Africa, now a wasteland of glass and fire. An alien supply convoy descended to harvest minerals from the ruined earth, guarded by a fleet of escort craft. From beneath the Sahara's scorched sands, hidden hangars opened and humanity launched its answer. A ragged fleet of hybrid ships, some barely held together by welding and desperation, rose into the air. Engines roared with mismatched harmonics. Alien plasma cores fused with human turbines. The aliens laughed at the audacity, certain this fledgling resistance would crumble in minutes. But the battle did not unfold as they expected. Human pilots, unbound by the rigid doctrines of alien warfare, fought like predators from the wilds of Earth, reckless, unpredictable, relentless. They rammed, feinted, and dove through formations with a savagery born from desperation. For every ship lost, 2 more struck back with suicidal fury. By the end, the convoy burned in the atmosphere, its wreckage falling like meteors across the dead sands. Humanity had bled terribly for the victory, but when the survivors returned to their bunkers, they carried with them not just scraps of alien technology, but something far greater, proof that the invaders were not gods, proof that humanity could fight and win. News of the Sahara victory spread like wildfire through the underground networks. Static-filled radios carried fragments of the battle, and soon whispers turned into belief. For the first time since the invasion, hope had a voice. Across the shattered world, hidden enclaves stirred. Engineers in flooded cities began building weapons out of scrap. Farmers in ruined plains grew food in hydroponic caves to feed soldiers. Even old generals, once resigned to extinction, emerged from hiding to lend their strategies. Humanity had always been fractious, divided by nations, politics, and greed. But the invaders had united them in a way nothing else could. No longer were they Americans or Chinese, Africans or Europeans, they were human, bound by the singular desire to defy annihilation. Resistance banners, stitched from whatever fabric survived, rose in hidden camps, marked with the crude emblem of a burning star. The symbol carried a message: we may fall, but we will burn bright doing so. This unity was fragile, built on desperation, yet it was also unbreakable, for nothing bound humanity together more fiercely than a shared enemy. But the invaders were not fools. Their war councils, vast gatherings of alien warlords, began to recognize that the human threat was growing. At first, they had dismissed the resistance as scavengers gnawing on scraps. But now reports painted a different picture. Patrols vanished without trace. Convoys were ambushed and annihilated. Even orbiting stations found themselves under sudden, suicidal attacks. The aliens underestimated humanity's creativity, the way humans could turn every weakness into a weapon. They saw primitive creatures turning battlefield chaos into strategy. Where the invaders relied on rigid formations and advanced technology, humans relied on unpredictability, emotion, and the terrifying willingness to die for a cause. And so the aliens resolved to escalate. No longer would they merely occupy Earth. They would scour it clean, leaving no trace of humanity behind. Planetary bombardments increased, turning forests into deserts and seas into boiling wastelands. Yet every strike that fell only planted another seed of vengeance in the hearts of survivors. Humanity, pushed to the edge of extinction, found a truth the invaders could never understand. The more you tried to crush them, the harder they fought back. Deep in the hidden command chambers beneath the Himalayas, resistance leaders gathered around a stolen alien star map. The room was dim, lit by flickering lamps and glowing fragments of alien tech salvaged from fallen ships. On the map, one star burned, brighter than the rest, a staging world, used by the invaders as a fortress and supply hub. If humanity could strike it, they would prove they were more than a nuisance. They would prove they were a rising force in the galaxy. But the plan was madness. No human fleet had ever ventured beyond Earth's orbit in living memory, and the alien stronghold was defended by armadas. Still, the leaders knew they had no choice. Survival demanded risk. Around the table sat scientists, soldiers, and even civilians who had lost everything, each one contributing whatever knowledge they had. Old myths of humanity's explorers, Magellan, Gagarin, Armstrong, were invoked as inspiration. They crossed impossible frontiers once, the leaders said. So will we. And with that, the resistance committed to its most audacious gamble. Humanity would take the war beyond Earth. The age of hiding was over. The age of vengeance among the stars had begun. The construction of humanity's first true war fleet began in silence and secrecy. Hidden dry docks were carved into mountains, underground caverns, and even within the husks of ruined cities. Every fragment of alien wreckage became precious material, reverse-engineered by desperate minds who had nothing left to lose. Human engineers worked by candlelight and sparks of welding arcs, fusing alien alloys with Earth's crude steel. Scientists who once studied medicine, physics, or agriculture now bent their genius toward weapons. Children carried supplies. Elders told stories of ancient heroes to keep spirits alive. It was not just machines being built in those dark caverns, it was the soul of a species, reforged in steel and fire. Against all odds, ships began to take shape. Jagged, imperfect vessels, but vessels that could fly. Their hulls bore scars of human desperation, yet each rivet hammered into place carried defiance. They were not elegant like the alien warships. They were brutal, raw, and alive. Humanity was not just preparing for a battle. They were crafting a declaration to the stars. We are not done yet. Training followed. Pilots were drawn from every corner of the fractured world, farmers who had never left their land, students who had never seen war, soldiers who had lost their armies. They learned not in flight simulators or academies, but in stolen alien cockpits, in hacked VR systems, and through deadly trial and error. Mistakes cost lives, but each death carved new knowledge into the survivors. They learned to fly ships not built for human hands, to adapt alien systems with instinct and creativity. The aliens relied on discipline, but humans relied on something far stranger, the ability to improvise under chaos. Soon ragged squadrons of resistance pilots emerged, unpolished yet terrifyingly effective. In drills they swarmed like packs of wolves, overwhelming opponents with unpredictable maneuvers. Their commanders understood. We cannot outgun the invaders, but we can outthink them. And so the resistance fleet did not train to fight like soldiers. They trained to fight like predators, turning every weakness into a kill. What had begun as chaos was becoming strategy, and what had been desperation was becoming power. At last, the fleet rose from its hidden shelters. Night skies across Earth flickered with the fiery trails of ships piercing the heavens. For the first time in generations, humanity was leaving its broken cradle not as explorers but as warriors. Across the world, survivors looked up from ruins and fields, watching with tears in their eyes as ships they had built with their own hands soared into the stars. It was a moment carved into memory, the rebirth of human destiny. The alien overlords watched from orbit, mocking the crude vessels, calling them fireflies destined to burn out. Yet even they felt a ripple of unease, for those fireflies burned with an intensity no calculation could predict. The fleet carried more than weapons, it carried the wrath of billions, the prayers of the fallen, and the desperate love of a species unwilling to vanish. As the last ship vanished into the void, silence fell over Earth. But in that silence beat a single truth. Humanity was no longer hiding. Humanity was coming for them. The human fleet arrived at the alien stronghold with no warning. A star burned red in the distance, casting eerie light over the colossal fortress world. Its skies, swarming with enemy warships, its surface bristling with towers of plasma and steel. To any sane strategist, the battle was suicide. But humanity had never been sane when it came to survival. The first wave struck like a storm, crude human vessels diving in reckless arcs, breaking apart enemy formations with sheer unpredictability. Alien commanders, trained to read logic and order, found themselves baffled by ships that refused to follow any pattern. One human squadron feigned retreat only to slingshot around a moon and strike from behind. Another rammed straight through an enemy cruiser, detonating its reactor in a blaze that lit the void. Every maneuver cost lives, but each sacrifice bought chaos. And in that chaos, humanity thrived. For the first time, the invaders felt fear, not of weapons, but of a species that turned death itself into a weapon. The battle raged for hours, stretching into what felt like eternity. Alien fleets unleashed waves of annihilation, cutting through human ships like fire through paper. Yet the humans endured. Every loss answered with vengeance. Resistance commanders broadcast across open channels, their voices raw and defiant. "We are humanity. You tried to erase us. Now hear our answer." Across the galaxy, listening stations of other species intercepted those transmissions. Civilizations that had long believed humans to be extinct now heard the echo of their return. They heard the sound of a species too stubborn to die. Meanwhile, on the fortress world's surface, hidden infiltration teams smuggled aboard and gutted enemy transports, detonated stolen cores. Within the alien reactors, explosions rippled through the stronghold, blinding defenses and shattering the enemy's coordination. Suddenly, the impossible shifted into the inevitable. The aliens, so certain of their supremacy, found themselves collapsing under a storm of defiance. Humanity, bloodied but unbroken, was winning. When the fortress finally fell, the void burned with wreckage. Human ships, scarred, broken, but still flying, hovered above the shattered world. The victory was not clean. It was carved out of fire, blood, and sacrifice. But it was victory nonetheless. For the first time, humanity had struck not in defense but in conquest. Across Earth, cheers erupted in ruins and caverns as news of the triumph spread. Children laughed in places where laughter had been extinct for years. Survivors lifted their eyes to the stars, knowing their future no longer ended at extinction. And in the wider galaxy, whispers began to spread. The humans, once thought erased, had returned not as victims, but as a force to be reckoned with. To their enemies, they became the legend they feared, the species that rose from ashes, the fire that could not be extinguished. And to themselves, they became something greater, the keepers of an eternal truth. You can try to erase humanity, but in doing so, you only forge the legend of our return.